As you might expect, there is more fallout tonight from Attorney General Merrick Garland's Friday announcement naming a special counsel, Jack Smith, to oversee the Justice Department's ongoing investigations into former President Donald Trump. These investigations cover the alleged mishandling of classified documents found at the former president's private home and club in Florida, and another investigation. Did any person or entity intentionally interfere with the peaceful transfer of power on January 6, 2021? All of this could, of course, take months, but the January 6 Select Committee is preparing to make its findings public much sooner. Appearing Sunday on Face the Nation, Congresswoman and January 6 committee member Zoe Lofgren of California said this about the committee's timeline.
Within a month, the public will have everything that we've found, all the evidence, for good or ill. And I think we've, as we've shown in our hearings, made a compelling presentation that the former president was at the center of the effort to overturn a duly elected election, assembled the mob, sent it over to Congress to try and interfere with the peaceful transfer of power. It's pretty shocking.
Of course, the Select Committee is likely to come to an end soon as Republicans take control of the House. For more on all this, I want to talk to our two colleagues. Scott MacFarlane joins me here in the Washington, D.C. Bureau, and joining me here at the desk, our political director, Serafin Gomez. Scott, I want to talk to you briefly about what you've heard and what specifics you can add to the committee's likely timeline for that full public report.
This is a committee that is quickly running out of time, Major. Their duties end at the end of this calendar year when this Congress ends, which means they have less than 6 weeks to finish up some pretty big tasks, including the release of that voluminous final word written report, which they have pledged will be comprehensive and which they've indicated could include all the transcripts of all their depositions, including with key players. They've got to get that done in the next 6 weeks, and I've had circled on my calendar the end of next week, December 1st and December 2nd, because in the legislation forming this committee, Major, the Congress requires the committee to wrap up its work 30 days after it writes its final report and issues that final report. December 1st and December 2nd are 30 days before the end of this Congress. What's more, the chairman of the committee, Benny Thompson of Mississippi, has said, Major, they hope to send this thing to the printers by November 30th, which dovetails nicely into the end of next week.
So obviously, Scott, this has been written as it has been developed, true?
Yeah, and I think we can expect some nuggets of news that we haven't heard so far, in part because there were certain teams of January 6 committee investigators who were assigned to investigate the security failures at the Capitol that day, to chase the money trail. And we haven't heard much about those at the committee's hearings. So presumably that'll be a component of this final written report, which will have some revelations about those two threads.
Scott, as you well know, it was a heavy news week in Washington last week. Among the developments, current House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing she will not seek a leadership position in the new Congress. Same thing for Steny Hoyer. And other House Democrats volunteered themselves as a kind of new slate at the top. What's happened since, and has anything about what has or hasn't happened surprised you?
Yeah, it's been about 72 hours since we got that new slate of likely House Democratic leadership contenders, and we've gotten nothing else since. Major, the silence has been deafening over this weekend because one of the rules of leadership battles is you get in early and you get in strong. These three have gotten in early. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who's been representing New York City for about 10 years, seeking to be the House Democratic leader, would be the highest-ranking black member of Congress ever if he secures the position. Catherine Clark of suburban Boston, seeking to be the House Democratic whip, would become the highest-ranking woman in the U.S. Congress. And Pete Aguilar, who serves on that January 6 Select Committee, seeking to be the number 3 leader in the House Democratic caucus. We just haven't heard other names formally announce themselves, and time is running short for that. They're going to meet to pick new leaders November 30th, December 1st. They'll pick their committee ranking members and their leadership team, and days are running short for any alternative candidates.
Speaking of former speakers, I want to run this soundbite by you, Fin Gomez, from former Speaker Paul Ryan. He appeared over on one of our network competitors this weekend at a Sunday talk show, talking about what he describes himself to be as a never-again Trumper. Let's roll that.
What we now know, it's pretty clear, is with Trump we lose. So I don't mean this personally. It's just evidence. We lost the House in 18, we lost the presidency in 20, we lost the Senate in 20, and now in 2022, we should have and could have won the Senate. We didn't. And we have a much lower majority in the House because of that Trump factor. So I think it's palpable right now. We get past Trump, we start winning elections. We stick with Trump, we keep losing elections.
Is it palpable, Finn Gomez, among Republicans that sticking with Trump is a losing strategy?
Well, I think what you're seeing with former Speaker Ryan also is that this has gone back for a while, this acrimony they've had between these two. He's declaring himself a never-again Trumper. He has been a never-Trumper for a while. And frankly, he's now joining a growing chorus within the Republican Party that has been critical over former President Trump's campaigning, the candidate equality issue when it comes to the midterms, and the underperformance by the Republican Party over those elections. So now what you're seeing is, yes, there's been an erosion of support for the former president, and I think that there is going to be more criticism and even more people jumping into the potential 2024 field.
Some of that pointed criticism came at the Republican Jewish Coalition's annual conference this weekend in Las Vegas. I want to play for you, Finn, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
Donald Trump picked candidates with one criteria, only one. Not electability, not experience, not wisdom, not charisma, not the ability to govern. But do you believe the 2020 election was stolen or not? If you do, I endorse you. If you don't, I reject you. Well, let me tell you, that's not what this party stands for. It's not what it should stand for in the future. And we've got to stop up and stop it now.
Finn, highly specific and on an issue that the former governor is correct. It was a litmus test for former President Trump. And it appears, based on the verdict delivered not by me or any other pundit, but by the voters, a damaging one.
Absolutely, and it was something that was talked about extensively. My sources at the RJC, at the RGA, the Republican Governors Association, before that, it was a hot topic. The blame that is now being presented towards the former president for these losses. And it's growing. Christie was one of the few people that actually mentioned Donald Trump's name, I want to say. But part of the Trump strategy for jumping in early was to freeze the field. It clearly has not done that. There have been his former cabinet members, his former vice president, his former secretary of state, were all there in Las Vegas on the RJC and positioning themselves for potential runs in 2024. It was not a freeze. It was not even a cold snap, Major. There are people that it's a potentially growing 2024 field.
Scott MacFarlane, on election night in our special report coverage, you talked at great length and specified the number of election deniers who were on the ballot. Many of them lost, but some of them won. Listening to Governor Christie, do you think that is going to be resonant in this new Republican Congress and there will be a pulling away from the denialism agenda?
Some of the congressmen and congresswomen-elect with whom I've spoken since they got here to Washington for the orientation, we're not talking about election denialism. They may have been distancing themselves from their own earlier views in avoiding that topic. But it's also hard to get around Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and so far, Georgia, where Trump selected nominees who won their primaries, who were election deniers, did not fare well. You saw what happened in Arizona. Michigan, the entire top of the ticket were people who we categorize as election deniers. Same is true in Pennsylvania. All of them lost. In Georgia, Trump's choice to run for governor lost the primary to Brian Kemp, and his choice for the U.S. Senate is now forced into a runoff. There's just not a track record in competitive races to keep this topic germane and relevant, to keep it among the chatter here at the Capitol. I'm surprised over the past 2.5 weeks how little talk there's been about election fraud among those who are returning here in January.
Scott MacFarlane, there's little track record politically. There's also no fact basis behind it. Finn Gomez, Scott MacFarlane, thank you so very much.